Use your powers for evil,
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Next Stop Everywhere, the podcast all about Doctor Who. As we say at this recording, only 25 days till the new season starts, according to Google. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Jackson, and joining me today is Charles Skaggs.
Well, hello. How wonderful to see you here. It's how unexpected.
Yes, indeed. We're actually recording in a different time because our special guest star has a family obligation on Sundays. I am thrilled because one of the reasons I have gotten into podcasting is this kind soul, along with her partners in Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, suggested to Karen and Lou, you know, you're going to do a Farscape podcast? This guy, Jesse, I think would be pretty interesting. He's pretty active. So from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, we have Wendy.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Wendy.
Thanks for letting me visit on a Monday.
Oh, we're so happy you did. A little behind the scenes, when I first started telling the guys at Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV that I was going to do a Doctor Who podcast with my good friend Charles, Wendy immediately, I want a guest star. I want to be on there. I want to be on. And so it has taken us over a year, but we have finally gotten her on. So Wendy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background on the Doctor? Who's your favorite Doctor and why? Just a little bit.
Well, I started watching Doctor Who, as probably many people who are listening did, back in the 80s, watching it on public television. For us, it was on Friday nights. And I had about 10 friends that we used to get together at different people's houses and watch Doctor Who and Red Dwarf and Monty Python reruns. And so Tom Baker was really my first Doctor. I sort of imprinted on him. And I don't have like a favorite memory of watching Doctor Who. Like, I don't have a favorite episode from that time at all. I just remember that when Colin Baker came in, I was bitterly disappointed. And not because he was a bad actor or anything like that, but he was too young. He was too happy. He was too, the boy next door.
You
me.
You thought Colin Baker was younger than Peter Davison?
Well, who was it? Peter Davison who came in?
Yeah, Peter Davison.
Yep. Oh, all right. Then that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
The one who played on All Creatures Great and Small.
Yes,
that's Peter Davison.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was also tainted from having seen him on that. I was sort of like, you're not the Doctor. You're just not him.
That's funny.
So, but then on the reboot, I pretty much like all the Doctors in the reboot. Mm-hmm. But I might give a smidge to Tennant.
Yeah.
But that's just because we haven't seen that much of Capaldi yet.
So another thing that I give credit to Wendy, I've been on the show and mentioned many times that Charles and Ken had been wanting me to watch the show for a long time, and I just had no interest. But
we broke him down.
Yeah, Wendy, Brent, and Kevin were all huge Doctor Who fans, and Wendy and Brent and Kevin all said, I think you'll like this, Jesse. And so I got to watch it, and they were very supportive, like, oh, yeah, you're going to like it. You're going to love it. So, and Wendy and I at last year's Dragon Con stood in line. Well, we sat in line for a long time and got to watch the second Capaldi episode, right? Inside the Dalek, right?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. One of the best ones.
Yeah. And so
the Dalek. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, a room full of, I don't know, 800 different Whovians, and at Dragon Con, and we all got to watch it together, and that was a lot of fun.
It was tons of fun. And wait until this year, because I actually have a very cool Doctor Who themed, it's not a costume, but it's clothing.
Oh, very cool.
That isn't
Excellent.
just a t-shirt.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I am very pumped. My lovely bride, Linda, we were at dinner the other night, and she said, "Why are you debating going to Dragon Con?" go. Just, you need to get out of town. You need to go and not worry about it. And so I'm excited to see, and it's less than 2 weeks. So
I know. Very
Yay.
excited.
And so one year
Jealous.
I've gone up to Charlestown to do the convention. So I got to get him down to
Yes.
Atlanta one year. So I think that would be a blast.
It's not not something I'm opposed to. Let's put it that way. No, it's just convincing my better half.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I apologize for the dog in the background. I am babysitting my son's dog, and he is barking at shadows.
You mean it's a special appearance by K9?
Yes, it is. Yes, and maybe it's not a shadow. Maybe he's seeing, a monster.
Yeah, it's a Vashta Narada. Yeah.
Yes. So, Wendy, you have picked Father's Day as the episode you want to discuss. You want to tell us why?
Sure. I wanted to go back and watch an Eccleston episode because I haven't watched any in a while. And at the time that this episode came out, I remember really liking the overall story. The themes about whether you can actually, undo things and the consequences of doing that. I really liked all the conflict that happens in the story. I really liked the sort of bittersweet glimpse we got into Jackie and Peter's marriage and how, as these young married people, they're not sort of living up to the expectations that they have of each other. And it was a far enough back in time that they seemed naive. And I hadn't watched an episode with Rose in a while. And this one sort of underscored sort of my thought about Rose at the time that Doctor Who came on, which was she's not very bright, but I realized
No, she's not.
I realized that part of her not being very bright is her youth and her naivete. And I thought that it really came across the conflict of, her yearning to know her father and have that moment to actually see him, and the conflict with the doctor, because he genuinely, to me, seemed like he really didn't know what to do. Although I think that's something we might want to talk about at the end, because, the timey-wimey thing, it's like, did he know from the beginning what was going to happen, or sort of know what was going to happen? So those were all of the reasons. And also because a lot of the other good season 1 episodes were taken by your other guests.
Oh, there's still plenty others.
Yes, there is.
We still have Dalek, the Unquiet Dead, the Parting of the Ways.
Yes.
So yeah, they're still out there.
But you're right. It is. Charles, how about you? What are your quick thoughts on the episode?
I dig this episode a lot. I think it's great. It was written by Paul Cornell, who is a longtime Doctor Who author as far as writing Doctor Who fiction. And then he kind of he's also done a lot of comics. Right now he's writing the Doctor Who 4 Doctors little miniseries for Titan Comics, which actually features the Reapers that are in Father's Day. So I've always been a big fan of Paul Cornell's work. Father's Day is no different. It's a great story. It's a very sad story, but very powerful, and it definitely gives you a lot of insight into Rose's character, but also, as Wendy said, also into Pete and Jackie's history, and we even get to see little Mickey Smith as a toddler, which is adorable. It's just a great episode all around, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I had just. With Nicola, we had just watched The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, and then BBC America has been showing some different classic, the modern era episodes. And so I had just watched the Tenet episode where the alternate Earth comes in, the other Peter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so this was really cool to watch. And this is a wonderful story. You guys have both said it's a very sad story. And one of my favorite novels is a book called Replay by Ken Grimwood, which the main character dies and comes back when he's 25. and then he keeps dying and keeps coming back and reliving his life over and over again. And it gives you a lot to think about, that if you were going to relive your life, what would you different and go that way? So I think this set up a really interesting thought pattern. And as bad as Pete looks, at other times he looks very heroic. And so I liked it a lot. So we're kind of going to go all over the map, but I want to start out with, do you think Rose from the start, when the doctor says you didn't seem interested to go with me till I mentioned time machine and then you jumped in, do you think this is something from the beginning she wanted to go meet her dad?
Yes, I do. I think she had it in her mind for sure.
That's interesting.
Charles?
What's your reasoning for that?
The way she was talking to him about it, because the way she was talking to him about it was very like, gee, do you think we could go to this time? And it's like people do that. It's like a little kid when they're really excited about something, but they kind of want to downplay it. And to me, she seemed to be very casual, but also sad when she was asking the question too. So, there was that. It was almost like childlike desire that was sort of creeping through in the way she was talking to him, because she's kind of like looking down on her feet and shuffling around. And to me, her body language was like, this was really important to her, but she was trying to communicate it like it was just, oh, I got this idea, let's maybe do this.
Okay.
Interesting. Charles?
I think it's possible she might have been thinking about it from the start of this episode while they're aboard the TARDIS, or at least sometime maybe shortly before the events of this episode. But as far as since the beginning...
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but since the beginning of the series, I don't think so. I don't think she joined the TARDIS with the intent to go back and like somehow convince the Doctor to go back into the past from the start when she first walked on. Because I mean, we never got any indication during like the End of the World or the Unquiet Dead or any of the other later episodes that she had this this weight over her father. She never really talked much about her father until really this episode. And it just seemed like the Doctor was like, well, we don't have a destination in mind. Where would you like to go? And then Rose is like, well, hey, now that you brought it up, that maybe, this will be the plan. I don't know.
I love the fact that Wendy brought that up, because I had not thought of that till you mentioned it. Now that you do, I totally see her kind of sort of, well, and it really does look like a little kid, focusing not on what they really want. Like, they're in a candy store and they know what they want, and they're kind of wandering and looking elsewhere, and then all of a sudden they go to where they want. So I definitely agree this has been on her mind for a while. I don't think, though, she planned on saving her dad's life. What do you two think?
Oh, no, I definitely don't think she planned to save his life. And I don't think she had this idea from day one, like the minute she stepped in the TARDIS, but she definitely had that idea and been thinking about it before she proposed it to the Doctor. It wasn't like she just thought of that the day that they went on their trip. But I don't think she planned to save him.
Yeah, I think that was more of like a screw up. It was like she was panicked because she froze the first time. Like she was just gonna, like, maybe she was gonna do something the first time and then like just panicked, or it froze, and then like the second time something happened that like she just like rushed out and pushed him out of the way. If that was her original intent, she would have done it the first time deliberately. But again, she froze.
And don't you think it's interesting she did freeze that first time? She says she wants to see him. She always felt bad that he was alone. And then this is so human that when she has the opportunity, she freezes. And then I had forgotten the part of them seeing each other again. And so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was almost like the second time was an overcompensation because she froze the first time.
Right.
And I loved at the end, jumping ahead, she doesn't freeze. And the doctor, for all his how mad he was at her and how upset, go to her. And she did get to do what she needed to do. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I think that it gave it a really nice, kind of ending. All right. Now, Charles and I were just talking about some timey-wimey things. And I'm thinking the Reaper should have come back another time or two. I don't remember specific the episode, and I think Charles will. But I think it's a great idea that when there's this paradox that they're there to clean up time. So, do you think they should have used them another time?
Well, I really liked them. I remember at the time that I first watched this thinking, these are really cool monsters. And it was also kind of cool because they were at a church and they almost were like, they're sort of gargoyle-y in some ways to me. So, yeah, I would have loved to have seen them again. And they never really, they haven't really explained why we only saw them that one time. Because it seems like we've had other fractures.
Right.
That were probably of similar scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. We had, throughout, the Matt Smith's first season, we had the Crack in Time. And that right there was, like ripe for a potential Reaper return. Or, you had various events, like you had the Day of the Doctor, where you had doctors meeting one another, crossing into their own timelines. That would have been a good opportunity. Or just, the Wedding of River Song, when time kind of gets, all the events of time get kind of smushed together. That would have been a great time for the Reapers.
Yeah, the one where, we keep seeing her crossing all the streams.
Right.
It would have been nice if you just saw one fly by when you looked down one of those corridors.
Exactly. Even just a little nod, even it wouldn't have to be like the focus of the episode, but even just like, there's, just kind of see it start to emerge and then goes away, to give you at least an idea of the scale of the threat that the Doctor is facing in that particular episode.
Yeah, and they're too good of a villain, and I also think it's kind of it's a nice kind of catch that if things are messed up too bad, one of the repercussions is this, creature you're going to get. And I agree with you, Wendy. They look beautiful in a scary way. And, being in the old church and how, the phone call, everything is kind of changing and they're all alone against this people, just, the creatures beating on the church to try to get in, made for a really great, close episode.
Yep.
Well, plus it was a wedding going on too, so that.
Okay, I think I just lost everybody. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but we'll find out. Oh, now I hear Jesse.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm muting because when the dog barks, so it won't get recorded.
Yeah, I was just I lost.
Okay.
Seemed to lose everybody.
Okay.
Especially, and for those who might be wondering at home, no animals were harmed in the making of this podcast.
Yes.
I'd like to just put that disclaimer out right there.
Yes.
My wife is a strong animal rights advocate,
Yes.
so I'm just putting that out there just to kind of
Absolutely
reassure everybody that
Yes.
the dog is perfectly fine.
I will post a picture of Charlie. It is my son's dog that I am dog sitting, and Charlie is 9 months old and fascinated by shadows. So I'm sitting in the study recording, and he is staring at the carpet, and anytime I move or there's any shadow, he barks, thinking that it's a creature he has to scare. Or Maybe it's the others or something. He's keeping an eye on the weeping angels for us. So,
Don't blink, Charlie.
yeah, don't
Yeah,
blink,
don't blink.
Charlie.
Constant vigilance.
Absolutely. Yes, he makes me glad I don't have a dog. What? Oh, I didn't say that out loud. Yes.
This is why I have a cat.
Yes,
Let's
absolutely.
put that out there.
So I am not a fan of Jackie as a character. And in fact, I will have the argument that the reason why we don't see companions' family much, I mean, we saw a little bit of Martha's, but normally we don't see them, is that Jackie ruined us forever from having moms. What are y'all's thoughts on her?
Well, I didn't like Jackie in the beginning, but I did start to understand, her fear. Right? She has this constant worry about her only daughter. Where's she going? What's she doing? And it's the maternal fear, right? You don't want your child out anywhere in the world, in the wilderness, in the universe. So after a while, I started to consider that her primary motivation, and I liked her. And that definitely was not in the beginning episodes, but once we got to the later ones where she sort of stepped up along with Mickey, and they were all sort of the extended Scooby Gang.
And
that's when I liked them.
And do you think part of it is that losing her husband the way she did with a hit and run, that makes her even that much more afraid of losing Rose?
Oh, I would think so for sure. That's all she has. She's her most precious thing. And she's already lost one thing that she loved deeply.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Jackie is a fun character. Initially, I was a little put off, but because the idea of just it was with a new series and being such a fan of the classic series, it definitely took a little getting used to with the new format. And Jackie was part of that because you never really got to know the companions' parents in one form or another. So Jackie being kind of a recurring character was definitely something new. I agree. She definitely got better as they kind of figured out what to do with her. And she's great comic relief in a lot of ways. I thought she was a little slap happy with the doctor, but I just got a little, I'm not a big fan of domestic violence in any form. So, especially Time Lord violence, but so that kind of threw me a little bit. But Jackie and the whole storyline with over Pete, like her Pete dying, and then eventually finding her own Pete from a parallel world. I actually thought that was a really good storyline and a great way to kind of close her character's arc. It kind of like brought kind of a nice closure and a nice restoration, because here she lost her Pete, but the universe gave her a replacement. And how great was that by the end of Doomsday that Rose got to go off with both her mom and dad, reunited through space and time.
Yeah, and I agree. Especially, I like the way that Jackie had romanticized Rose's dad to her. And I thought it was amazing and really well written that when you see the reality that, a couple with a young baby, the financial pressures you have, there is a love there, but there also is, they're real. And, the joke I make, and I honestly say I took it from her father, Linda's dad. Linda and I were married 31 years this past June, and 30 of them the happiest years of my life.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, because there is time in there where you're not happy, and in under pressure, and imagine a baby and the financials. And so I thought that was really well done. And it gave you a great payoff when we see the other dimension. Peter had lost his Jackie, and this Jackie had lost her Peter, and them finding each other made for a really sweet kind of full circle that very Doctor Who-ish, but a very happy ending. And so it was very nice.
Yeah, I definitely like that they both got sort of the better versions of the person that they had lost. And I say that because Jackie was very quick to jump to bad conclusions about him when she sees him with, Rose before she knows who adult Rose is. And it almost seemed to me like, she had created this story about him talking about, he liked to go on adventures. And it was almost like she had taken, after he died, those doubts that she had about him and decided to turn them into this very romantic story. And then the Pete that she gets in the alternate universe really is a much more heroic person that lived up to her fantasy almost.
That's a great point. I think that it's almost like they each got the fantasy version of the one they wanted to be with. And because Jackie, like Jackie's Pete was like down on his luck, like just he was a dreamer, but he was a complete failure as a provider. And so now here she gets that very successful Pete that she's probably always wanted, or especially, at least when he was alive, always wanted. And so, she gets her ideal Pete, and Pete from the parallel Earth, his Jackie was just horrible person. And so now Jackie, he gets his Jackie that's much more complementary to, or I want to say complements his own personality, I guess.
Yeah, and I think both of them losing their partners made them more appreciative when they had the chance to go back to that. And none of that payoff would happen if you hadn't had this episode. And I want to talk a little bit about the Doctor losing his temper with Rose. So, I'm going to skip Wendy and go to Charles. How often did he do this in the past? And then I want Wendy and I to talk about that. This was, I don't remember too often. I just watched, the Best of the Doctor, and they show Tennant's final episode. And even when he's upset, he isn't specifically upset at Wilford. So, right. The Doctor is mad at Rose, at least from my perspective. I mean, he's furious. He calls her an ape, right. Not specifically, but human. So is that something unusual, or?
Well, this Doctor, the Ninth Doctor, he does have that kind of arrogance where he views humans as stupid apes. He's mentioned that in the episode Rose, that he seems to have a kind of almost a superiority complex when it comes to humans, which is a little not. I mean, the Doctor always has a superiority complex in a lot of ways, but this one seems much more overt, and he just kind of sees them as a little. Interestingly, he sees them as lower life forms, really, or at least acts that way. Now, that could be just a front because he does care about humans. I mean, he always seems to go back to Earth. So if he really hated humans, he wouldn't keep going back to Earth. And now doctors throughout the series, the original and the current, they get mad at their companions from time to time, particularly the Sixth Doctor with Perry, Colin Baker. But it doesn't last. There isn't that kind of ongoing grudge. Even when, the Amy and the 11th Doctor used to get kind of mad at each other, especially Amy getting mad at the Doctor, and they used to have their arguments. They never really lasted. With this situation with Rose, I think the doctor, personally, I think the doctor shares a lot of the blame with the situation that Rose created, because he was the one that not only brought her back to see her father die, he brought her back again to see her father die because she didn't run to him and give, and help him pass on. So if it wasn't for the doctor taking her back and risking that paradox, there wouldn't have had the paradox, and you wouldn't have had the Reapers to begin with. So I don't know why he's that angry with her, because I feel he shares a lot of the blame in it.
Yeah, and even before they go on the trip, he makes a comment, he warns her about unintended consequences, but he's really flippant about it. And I don't think he communicates the gravity to her because of the way he says, sure, let's go, but there could be consequences. And it's like, I don't know if she really gets that still or not. So, he didn't give her the this is really serious and dangerous speech until afterwards.
Yeah. And I do think he calmed down. I mean, he forgave her and, made her say she's sorry. And, so I thought that was just interesting, though. And a nice twist from this doctor.
Now, I do want to bring up that this story takes place right after the long game, which had companion Adam Mitchell take advantage of traveling to the future to, they put that little, the little flap in his forehead so that he can, upload or get all kinds of information, download it into his brain. So he was pretty angry about that. That's why he kicked Adam out of the TARDIS.
Good point.
And so this, here it is. And I think that's maybe why he makes the comment, I did it again, I picked another stupid ape.
Yeah.
Is kind of a reference maybe to Adam Mitchell from the previous episode.
No, I think that's a very good point.
So you think he was equally mad at himself as was at her?
I think it's possible. I think, just he was hoping that Rose would, handle it better. I don't know. Or maybe he was testing her and she kind of let him down. We don't really know. But, if it all depends, I guess, on how you want to look at it. I think it's open to interpretation, definitely.
I think that's some really good points, though, because, a lot of times you're really mad at yourself, but you lash out to someone you care about.
Right.
Yeah.
And the doctor does that a lot.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yes, he does.
Absolutely. So Pete makes a point that he thinks the doctor figured out what needed to happen a long time ago, and he was just trying to not make it so. Talk about Pete's sacrifice and what's your thought on it, and how the story kind of comes full circle where Rose gets to do what she wanted to do.
Well, for me, the part where he's...
Did we lose Wendy? I can't hear Wendy.
Right.
Okay.
And he realizes.
Hey, Wendy, say that again. You went mute on us.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
When he talks to Rose and says what's he like in the future, and of course she has nothing, so she makes up this lie, and he realizes it, and I think that was like the moment where he realized he had a role to play here. It wasn't relying on other people to solve the problem, but he was going to have to step up. For me, that was sort of the moment for his character where he sort of made the turn from all this emotion of his connection with his daughter and everything that was going on, realizing who was who, to the bigger situation and what his part was going to be in it. So I loved that idea, especially because he was a guy who really sort of didn't live up to his potential or didn't really figure out, what his real calling was. And it turned out it was to save them all by dying.
Yeah. And go ahead, Charles.
No,
I'll add.
only thing I was going to say is that it's kind of a credit to Pete's character that he figures this out. He figures out that Rose is his daughter without her actually saying it. She obviously wants to tell him, but at least, tries not to. But he figures it out on his own. He is apparently at least intelligent enough to do that. I think it may be because Pete is a dreamer, and so he's more open to that kind of unusual possibility. That's why Jackie doesn't get it, because maybe I don't know if Jackie's not as smart, not as intelligent, but I think that maybe she isn't as open to other possibilities.
Yeah, and and she accepts it after a while.
Right.
And I love that, am I a good dad? And with Rose lying, and him saying, that's not me. He knows she's lying is a great, great point.
Yeah.
And I love the line, I'm your dad, it's my job for it to be my fault.
Right.
And that's just so...
Yeah, he's obviously a very noble, self-sacrificing person.
Yes.
And if knowing that this is Rose, his daughter, grown up, he's willing to do whatever it takes at the expense of his own life to make sure that she's okay.
Yeah, and we have the great scene where no one touched that key, and when they had set it up very Chekhov's baby. Don't touch the baby, Rose.
Yeah.
And when he hands baby Rose to adult Rose, they eat the doctor, the TARDIS, and Pete figures out himself what he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when he runs into the street and everything disappears, and oh, what a great score when the doctor says, run to him. I mean, that will make you cry no matter what.
Yeah, Murray Gold's music will do that.
Yes, such a powerful ending.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. And when he smiles.
Yes.
When they have that moment of connection, that last moment.
And, and I love how Rose changes the story. And not just for Jackie, but for the man who hit her dad, right? Because it was a hit and run originally. So that young person lived with that guilt. But instead, it was just a kid, and, it was an accident, and he couldn't be helped because your father just jumped in there, and they talk about the woman being there. They totally changed the story without changing the story, if you know what I'm saying. And it was such a nice way to give Rose this quasi-happy ending.
Didn't it also that the driver stayed on the scene?
Yes.
In the second version?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why, that even the driver got redemption instead of living with that being a hit and run, they find out. So it's just really, really wonderful. It just makes you like Pete so much that he does figure this out himself. He and just a really, really great way. So anything else in the story before I want to ask you guys more a theoretical question, but is there anything else in the story? Charles, do you want to check your wonderful notes to see if we missed anything?
I don't know if we missed anything, but I did like the fact that we kind of got we did get to see little Mickey as a toddler.
Yes.
That was a nice touch.
And it's kind of like it kind of explains why Mickey's a little bit cowardly when we first meet him, because as a kid he had this encounter with monsters.
Right.
And I'm wondering if, even though that kind of time was, realigned, maybe part of that kind of stayed with him. I'm wondering.
And I also love, boy, he'll just stick to you no matter what.
Yep. I pity his girlfriend when he gets older. Yeah.
Yes. That was really nice. So very cool. How about you? Go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing.
Keep going.
I was just going to say one quick thing I thought was hilarious was that Pete and Rose in Pete's car listening to Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up."
That was one of my.
Yeah.
It was like, look, they got Rickrolled.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Or Doctor Who's Rickrolling Us. One of the
Yes, it
That
was.
could be. Yeah. That could
Yeah,
be.
I thought that was really funny. Yes. Anything else, Wendy?
Well, just I did like the '80s aspect of this, especially because these are sort of working class people. So we had the big hair and
Yes.
the pink and all that. I thought that really worked though, really well.
Yeah, and I love, even though I hate it, but the dad, of the groom going, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. You're going to trap. And this was a very father protecting episode. That was really cool. So my question is there a point in your life that you would want to go back and visit again?
Like visit to do over or just visit to hang out because it was fun? Like, which way do you mean?
So I'm going to go with a visit to hang out. I'm going to throw in there that
this would get really morose if you.
Yeah. Okay.
so I'm looking.
Let's kind of keep it
Yeah.
upbeat. Let's keep.
I wasn't going to go back.
It's
to
like,
the
I'm gonna go
parts
through
of
my
my life I do over.
I'm gonna go through my regrets. No.
No, I mean, I think there's a certain time. There's a couple time periods that I would love to go revisit again. When I was a kid, my mother's family, she has a large extended family of Italian immigrants all over like the East Coast, and one of her cousins had this farm up in upstate New York, which is really just about an hour outside of New York City, is upstate New York for most people. And we had a blast on that farm. It was a huge old broken down farmhouse, but we would all get together for these big long weekends and Thanksgiving, and like the part that the kids slept in had no heat, but there was a barn and you could like jump into the hayloft, and that was like where my brothers and sisters learned how to drive a car when they were 11 through a field, and my cousins were all a lot of fun. So that would be a time I would love to go back to, that farm and hang out with those kids.
Very interesting.
Would be one of them for sure.
You may have looked at my paper. Charles, tell yours and then I'll share mine.
Well, Jesse may sort of appreciate this one. One of the times I would like to go back, one of my favorite times in my life, was in June of 1992. It was the summer when Batman Returns came out.
Yes.
And I took a little trip out to New Jersey, where this fan fiction writing group I belonged to at the time, that Jesse may be familiar with, called Titan Talk,
absolutely
took place. And I went out there, met a bunch of great friends, some of whom are my lifelong friends to this day. One of whom is actually my wife.
Yes.
Lori. So that was the weekend that I met her, and I think it's one of my happiest memories of my life.
Yeah, I regret that I never was able to make a Titan Talk CM party where they were putting the thing together. Though Charles and Laura's wedding was as close they could be. We had tons of people.
See, that's another would be another great time, because during Lori's wedding, that was the first time that Jesse came out, and I got to meet Jesse live and in person for the first time.
Absolutely.
So if it wasn't for Titan Talk, I wouldn't have met Jesse.
Yeah. So, a absolutely beautiful weekend. Yes. I've often said that if I had a TARDIS, I would take it to every Springsteen show I could see. But I'm going to be like Wendy. My grandparents owned a dairy farm in Rose Pine, Louisiana, and my uncle and aunt and two of my cousins lived on the house right next door to it. And some of my best memories are hauling hay, when we've cut the hay. But I specifically, I would remember they would all be on the front porch, and we'd be shelling peas. And, there'd be huge wash tubs. Picture, a 55-gallon wash tub filled with peas, and 2 or 3 of them. And the adults would be sitting there telling stories and laughing and joking and talking about when they were kids. And we kids would be all sitting around with, our soft drinks, and we would be shelling peas. And it was such a happy memory. I often say that the Springsteen Mary's Place kind of makes me think of that time. So if I could go back and visit, I would love to see, both my grandparents are gone now. One of my aunts are gone. But just the idea of that, there was no TV. They may have music on in the background. You're just sitting there talking and feeling like a family. And that is something that we don't get much of now. A lot of the family scattered away. So that's why I said, Wendy, you looked at my paper, because mine's pretty close to you. I loved my grandfather's dairy farm, and, going to the barn and out in the hay fields, and, just doing all those different things. So yes, I would go back and see that in a minute and have a lot of fun. So good.
And then go see a Springsteen show.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, if I had unlimited access to the TARDIS,
Yeah.
I would be going to every Pearl Jam show ever.
Yes. For me, it would be going back to seeing U2 at Cleveland Stadium in 1988 during the Joshua Tree tour. So that's one of my favorite shows.
I thought of that, and I will get back on target in a minute, but I remember in like 76 or 77 at the music store, and I can't even remember the name of it, but the guy was telling us that he had gone to see Houston, in Houston, he'd seen a Springsteen show, and, was so exhausted that he didn't even stay for Born to Run, on the encore. It was worn out.
I missed the best part.
Yeah, and so, that would be cool to see.
Springsteen at Live Aid. How's that?
So it would be fun, Wendy. You and I could convince the doctor that alternate, so I could go with you and we could hang to see the Pearl Jam, and then you could hang the Bruce.
We go to Seattle, we go to Asbury Park.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. So good.
And then the Reapers show up. No.
Yes, exactly. So do you have a favorite quote from the episode, even though I forgot to put that on the agenda?
I did not know there would be math.
I know. Sorry.
No,
I forgot to include it. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, I know how this game is played with you, Jackson. So I've got a couple here. So one of my favorite lines was, "I did it again. I picked another stupid ape. I should have known. It's not about showing you the universe. It never is. It's about the universe doing something for you."
Absolutely.
And then a much nicer Ninth Doctor quote when he's talking to the couple that's about to be married. Or that's
go ahead, take my line.
Yep.
Take my line.
I will. I will. "Who said you're not important? I traveled to all sorts of places, done things you couldn't even imagine. But you two, street corner, 2 a.m, getting a taxi home. I've never had a life like that. Yes, I'll try and save you."
And, that is, and I did not bring it up because that was going to be my line. That was such a sweet moment. And, I think that's been a consistent thing, no matter who's the doctor, is reminding us, and I'm going to get deep for a moment, those are the magical moments.
Right.
You wanted to go back to Jersey to visit with Titan Tech people. Wendy and I both wanted to go back to family, to see these things. They happened to meet.
Right.
They shared a taxi and they fell in love. So, good.
Well, I just want to add to that, because I think that's one of the things that they do consistently in the Doctor, especially in the new reboot, of those moments where the Doctor's pointing out things that he recognizes he doesn't have himself, that happen to humans that
Right.
don't happen to him. And it says a lot about his character that he isn't, envious when they happen to other people. He's genuinely happy to see them happen, even if they don't happen to him.
Yeah, he appreciates it.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
And he knows, yeah.
Mhm.
So my two, I love now, Rose, you're not going to bring about the end of the world, are you?
That was-
Talk a little
Yeah.
bit.
The baby. Yeah.
And I love when the doctor is honest and says, between you and me, don't have a plan.
Yeah.
So it's very good. So how about a rating, though, Wendy, on a scale 1 to 10?
I would give this a solid 9.
Okay, good. Charles?
I give this one 8.5 out of 10. Glowing hot TARDIS keys.
And I would give it 9 Eccleston smiles. When he smiles, his whole face smiles. I mean, every muscle in
beams.
his face, he
Yeah.
does beam. So absolutely. So yeah, solid, great episode. And I think it's wonderful as we go back to this first season of the modern era, how much you can tell Russell T Davies loved the show and was interested in making the best show possible. That's true to the Doctor roots, but giving it this modern twist. And I just love that. Charles, do you have a reverse the polarity for us?
I might. Going with the theme of altering the past. We're gonna go back to reverse the polarity back to 1975 with the Genesis of the Daleks. This is the 4th serial in season 12, Tom Baker's first season as the Doctor. So it's the 4th Doctor, Sarah Jane Smith, and companion Harry Sullivan, who you have not seen yet.
No, I haven't.
But he's kind of like in the first couple of seasons of Tom Baker's run. But this episode was written this story was written by Dalek creator Terry Nation, and what happens in this one is the Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry are sent back in time by the Time Lords to the planet Skaro during the original war between the Thals and the Khalids. And this is what leads to the creation of the Daleks.
Ooh.
And we get the first appearance of Davros, who's introduced this first time. So it's kind of a big deal.
Okay.
And Davros, of course, being the evil bastard that he is, he takes advantage of the Khalid's end to bring about the Daleks because that's his agenda. The Doctor, during the course of the story, the Doctor and his companions rig these explosives in this mutation room where the Khalids are becoming Daleks. And it's this moment, this very pivotal moment, where the Doctor is actually able to completely change history and wipe the Daleks, keep them from ever being created. And it also sets off this big ethical dilemma, where the Doctor asks himself, he's holding these two wires together, right side by side, ready to connect them and cause this explosion. And he's asking himself, do I have that right? And so there's a nice, I won't spoil what happens, but
okay.
It's kind of an interesting way because, does time get altered? Will the Doctor, he's got this opportunity to wipe out one of his most hated enemies, the hatest, except for the Master maybe, and has a chance to remove that threat from the universe once and for all. So does he do it?
Well, considering the Daleks are the most popular villain, and still big, but no,
Yep.
I will have to check that one out. Good.
Yep, highly recommend. Great story.
Next week we are having two companions join us: the oft-mentioned Ken and Charles and I's fellow podcaster in Storming the Castle and the Fandom podcast, Karen, are joining us to talk about the 4th Doctor, City of Death. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's Douglas Adams story.
Yes.
Highly recommended. Yeah, I hope you guys check it out before we record next time, but you will not be disappointed if you do.
And Wendy, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. Sorry for all the technical glitches that we've been having. And I think we're having one quite now because I can't hear one. Oh,
okay, now we
there.
can. Go ahead, Wendy.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I have lost you guys a few times.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for letting me come over and play. I would love to come back, maybe talk about a Peter Capaldi episode.
We'll have
season.
to do that. That'll be fun.
Yep.
And maybe
so
go back to a Tom Baker episode.
Okay, that'd be great.
Just let us know when you're available.
Yeah.
Well,
so Wendy,
welcome back.
Where can we find you?
Well, you can find me at Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, the genre viewer's guide to sci-fi and genre television, with Kevin Batchelder and Brent Barrett are my co-hosts, and we talk about everything that's on TV that we're watching, which is almost everything. And we also do some bonus shows, as you all might know. If you've heard Jesse, who is one of our members of the small council for our Game of Thrones bonus podcasts, which have expanded into a whole nother
we have
universe of bonus shows at this point.
There's only 10 episodes of the season, and I think we're up to 16 episodes of this bonus for this season.
Yep, and we have at least one more coming.
Yes.
Now, being Game of Thrones, are we sure he survives?
Yes, I hope so. And also, I will give a plug. Wendy did a wonderful kind of Peggy Carter episode that I loved because I loved that series and it was fun to hear her talk about it. She's done some stuff with Maureen Ryan about Supernatural. Wendy is the one who got me into watching Supernatural. And now then this season, the past few seasons of Supernatural is like Muhammad Ali at the end of his career. It's not really for competition. It's just for money. And if you watch it that way, you're happy with it.
I haven't heard it described that way, but yeah, Supernatural has turned. We say that we've recalibrated our expectations of Supernatural.
Yeah, a sportscaster said a long time ago that you had to, at the end of Muhammad Ali's career, you could not judge him as in his prime because he was no longer fighting to be competitive, but he was just doing it to make money for his family. So you had to adjust your expectations and understand the motivation by it. And I said, and I'm not blaming the boys. I mean, they are keeping a whole cast and crew, in jobs. And so why wouldn't they? But it is no longer the show that, that first 5 seasons, right?
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely not the same show.
Yeah.
But it's still a good show and very entertaining.
Absolutely.
There's worse things you could watch on television than Supernatural.
Under the Dome.
But Jesse, that one. Definitely for sure. I wanted to come back to your comment about Agent Carter because I think for season 2, I will be getting together again to talk about Agent Carter. And we might do, every episode discussion versus one discussing the whole thing.
Well,
but stay tuned for that. And
if you need an extra voice, let me know.
We'd love to have guests.
Okay, great. So for now, we appreciate it. Charles, where can they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. And also my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about things like Doctor Who and comics and all kinds of sci-fi goodness. And then there's also my other podcast that I do with Karen Lindsay, the aforementioned Karen Lindsay, the Fandom Zone podcast, where we talk about just about every comic book show on television these days, and this season coming up is going to be quite interesting because there are a lot of them.
Yes, there is. And that'll be fun. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW, and as well as talking Doctor Who. The 80s reboot Overdrive from this same network has been having me join them, and I recorded today a special Bruce Springsteen in the 80s podcast where me and a couple of fellow Bruce buds went through all of the releases of Springsteen in the 80s and talked about them. And so look for that. That was a lot of fun. And we kind of talked, and, we may have talked Born in the USA, but that wasn't our top list of the best albums of the 80s.
Springsteen, inconceivable.
Yes.
That was my first Bruce Springsteen show, though, was when he was on the Born in the USA tour.
Well, what I said, and just to show you all around, I said Born in the USA is the Blink of Springsteen albums. It is the gateway album that gets you into Springsteen. So, and Colleen, who did not catch it, but Tony, who is from the UK, thought that was a brilliant analogy. So I hit 1 out of 2 on my Bruce Springsteen fans. So thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Charles. We will do this again. For now, we're going to keep hope alive, and remember, drop your weapons or I'll kill him with this deadly jelly baby.